This is a standard Suzuri stone. And what we're going to do is begin by adding a little bit of water. And you can do this, just kind of gauge it. For this, you want to pour in here how much ink you're going to think you're going to need for the day of practice. This is the ink stick that I recommended. And so this is a darker black. And what you want to do is you're going to be dipping your ink in the water. And so that's called the C of the stone, or the Suzuri. And then you pull it up onto the land. And you can hear it if you put your ear close, you know. And what you're going to start to see is that the ink is going to start to slowly dissolve and be removed from the stick into little pigments. And the ink stick is made up of soot, which is like burnt reeds. And then it's mixed with wonderful, depends on the recipe from the family, but there'll be herbs, and there'll be perfume and different things, attributes to make it pleasant to work with, as well as to make it the paper preserved. The ink will be preserved in the paper and detract from insects. So that's your mini ink stick lesson today. So now, for those of you that have already mixed your ink, please sit on the edge of your seat. If you're mixing your ink, do the same. Scooch up so you're sitting on the edge of your seat. The reason you're doing this is you want to be opening up your diaphragm so you can breathe. Now you'll notice that what I'm doing as I mix the ink is I'm making sort of the sign of the infinity. This has just been my habit. Some do it in a circle. Really what you want to be doing is getting a smooth movement going into the water and up and down to sea, up to land. Now we coordinate this with our breath. So you want to inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Straightening your spine, lifting up so you can feel your weight lifting up out of your hips, out of your pelvic bowl. So I'm going to count us in, and normally what you would do is just go one direction 10 times with your stone, and then reverse it and go the other way 10 times. And do that probably a combination of 4 times, and your ink should be thick enough. So I'm going to count us in. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Sorry, I hope you're not turning blue or passing out. I forgot that we were breathing. Okay. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You start to feel it move nice and slick. There's glue, and you can probably feel that now under your stick. And so what you want to do is make sure that when you lift it, you can see it kind of dripping down. And now we've got some nice thick ink, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it from the ink stone into a ceramic dish. So I will continue to have some thick sticky ink on my stone, which I can come back and use later on. The other thing is you never want to rest your stone or your stick against the stone, because remember there's glue here, and this wet, it'll stick. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to prop it up in the box like that and let it air dry. So now we've got our thick ink is going to dry here, and we have our puddle of ink here. So you can see about how much is it. And I have this tilted, so I also am allowing the ink that's closest to me, it's going to be thinner in the dish, so that'll get a little drier too. So I'm going over this quite slowly because I want to make sure you understand how to get your ink as dark as possible and as thick as possible when you need it. The next thing I'll do is demonstrate how to load the brush. And notice here I've got my dish to the far left with my darkest black. Here I've got my water dish. I like to have this one that's got 3 compartments. And so what ends up happening then is you reserve one for only, this one will only be clear water, and these 2 will be rinsed water. And so I can actually use those for different gradations, maybe later on if I want to. So now I'm going to demonstrate how to load this combination brush we'll be using today. And the first thing you want to do is, you know it's a combination because the outer hairs are like a light hair, it's goat, and the inner hairs are resilient and springy. So you want to dip your brush, and I'm holding it, so I'm just getting all the hairs soaking wet so that when I lift it up, you can see there's a bead of water at the tip, and you knock that off. But I'm going to go ahead and do that a couple times because these are handmade brushes. They're made with a lot of attention to where the hairs are placed. So you want to be treating this as the treasure that it is. And you knock off that extra water. And sometimes you might get a loose hair and just pull it out. All right, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the upper hairs of my brush. Because mainly what I want to do is I want all the hairs to be wet so that they're pliant, but then I want to control the moisture. So these outer hairs hold the most moisture, so I tap it off on the paper edge of the paper towel on the upper side to dry those hairs. Now I'm going to dip my brush in the ink. I'm going to just take out a piece of Schwan paper, sizing side up, the smoother side up. All right. Now I'm going to review. We dipped the brush all the way in, got all the hairs wet, and now I'm going to just slide the very tip of the brush about between 1/8 and 1/4. And then I knock that off. And now I'm going to go and tip my brush, just pick up that top 1/4. And this plate, oh, it's got water in it. So this one is dry, And so I'm going to use this as my mixing plate, where I just rub and roll the tip. And so now this brush is so absorbent, it's soaking up that gray ink in there. So I've already got gray, I've got clear, gray, and now I want to get a little dark again at the tip. Now this ink I just mixed, and so it's probably still pretty wet. So I'm going to want to test. So I'm going to test and see how dark it is and how wet that line is. So that's what I did for my first line. I just made that test. It's a little light. One of the reasons why it's light is because the water will continue to run down to the tip, as well as this hasn't fully concentrated. So even though it looks black, it's still not completely dark. So I'll come pick up some of my darker ink here. Another thing you can even do is you can just go to your ink stick and pick up some dark ink here while you're waiting for that sticky ink to dry. There are also some manufacturers where you can get a thick concentrated ink. More on that later. All right. So by now, please load your brush as I have and test it on your paper. Now you see when I added the darker ink, now I've got a darker line. So now I'm happy. The other thing that I want to mention is that you hold your brush. So now I would like you, after you've loaded your brush, I want you to think about your intention for taking the class. And maybe it's a word. So I'd like you to write down whatever that word is. I'm going to do my word in kanji. So you have your intention, and so I'm asking you to write it in English. Maybe you want to print it. Maybe you want to write it. Now, continue to practice with this load of your brush and write your name. However you sign your name is how I want you to do it. And I'd like you to do it naturally, and then I'd like you to do it holding your brush up and down, as I explained before. So you would hold your brush like this. And those of you that have a short first name, you might want to add your last name so you get more practice. The reason why I'm asking you to do this is because usually your signature is something that you're most familiar with writing. And so you want to use this tool, this new tool, this way, with something that you're familiar with and see if you can adapt it. And you also tend to write it a little bit more quickly, and that's something that is important in SUMI-E, is learning how to move the brush at different speeds. But for line, you might need to move it a little bit faster. There is a main way to hold the brush. All right, so I have my elbow up off the table, and see how I'm holding my brush? I have it between the first two fingers and my thumb. All right, now I can take these other fingers behind, and I can roll and manipulate by, with these other fingers. So this is the main way to hold it. Now, I'm going to use a smaller brush so you can see it a little bit better. But when you're holding it, if you hold it towards the top, that's for really long lines and big sweeping strokes. Hold it in the middle is more of a default, and then you move up and down. Down like here for more control. And you can still paint with your elbow off the table. However, once you want to get real detail, you might want to hold your brush down very close. And what I'm doing here is I can brace my hand, so I can move it back and forth, keeping it straight. So I'm not moving it like this. I'm moving it more like this. I'm not moving it like this. I'm moving it more like this. And that's where we get that, we want to get that up and down movement. So if I were to do the bone stroke, I would go down, up, and then down. So I go down, up, and down. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of rolling it this way as I go down, and then I lift, and then I roll it back. So I'm going up and down. And the other thing I'm doing, for this one, I'm actually bracing my arm, and so I'm rolling it to the left, and then over, and then rolling it to the right. So to the left. So what it would be kind of like, think of like tucking in the ends of your strokes, and then you'll see they start to look like the bone. And you start a little bit lower on one end, and you go up as you're lifting, and then a little bit higher at the end. So you want to start building in, see how I've got this angle going this way, and then if these were straight lines, I've got this space here and this space here.